Thanks for coming, everybody. My name is Shawn King, and this webinar, if you will, workshop, lecture, whatever it is today, is somewhat of a summary of what I've been doing the last year, this year, 2017, as Colorado Music Ambassador, which is a lofty title that just means I've been getting involved in a lot of what would we say? We've done some workshops, done some advocacy. I've been connecting a lot of dots. I've been doing a lot of listening. I've been helping with licensing and just generally plugging in and trying to determine what's happening within the scene. Mostly Denver, but I'm up here a lot and trying to listen to what people's needs are from out of state. So if there is anybody on Facebook from outside the Front Range, please know that we're going to open this up to questions after I'm done. And Kyle over here, who's helped me a ton with the music strategy and my role as ambassador and defining what that is, he'll be fielding questions. So we will get to that, and I would encourage you to ask because this is the time. I think I've learned a lot, but there's still a lot more to learn within the scene. I'll start here. I call this one next level music because I was thinking, how do we define, how do we put a fence around what I've done? And it's been all over the place what I've done this year. So I was thinking one of the common themes that keeps coming up, whether it's a workshop about composing for film or a workshop about licensing or a workshop about management, whatever it is, the common theme and the gist of it all is just making great music, and I think that can be a very wide, strange target to get to. But what I thought of today was why don't we take some ideas, use these as what we call them, like action items. So maybe today you could write down something from these 10, just take one, and maybe there's something you could take from this that you could work on as soon as you leave or tonight. All right, so 10 ways to improve your sound and yourself. Here we go. And let me first define this whole thing. Colorado Music Ambassador, what does it mean? Like I say, there's a lofty title given to me by Governor Hickenlooper, and with the help of the Colorado Music Strategy and the partners involved. In 2017, we've done workshops and talks, and this is the inaugural year of this role. It will continue. Within this year, I put together a workshop that we called it Young Managers Workshop, and the idea was to talk to people who probably hadn't managed before, trying to get them to think about what it would mean to take a risk on a band. We did another one called the Producers Panel. Fortunately, we recorded that one. Kyle and I got the audio on that, and that's going to be available. We did another one talking about composing for film and television. Likewise, that one we got audio and video, which is really funny because my bandmate Tom Hagerman has some zingers in that one. There was a talk that I gave with the Colorado Music Collective that meets every month. They're on their 20th meeting already, and they meet at Syntax. I would highly recommend stopping by Syntax to hear what they have to say. In the beginning of the year was at Youth on Record Studio Day, where a lot of professionals get in and start mingling with students who record. I put together a drummers panel at the cafe at Red Rocks, which was a lot of fun for me. I'm a drummer, but Brian from Big Hits Out of the Monsters, Ben from The Fray, and Nate Barnes from Rose Hill Drive were there, and that was I would say very kind of a niche thing, very specific, but a lot of fun. And then in this same room, we did a panel on licensing. That one is also recorded. So within that, let's see. I don't know if I'm editing that. Ready to switch, yeah. Okay, so that was what I just mentioned was all this year. Last year, I was dealing with what we call the Colorado Music Licensing Project, and that was me putting together, kind of pitching to people who needed music for their media, for their commercial typically, or web advertisement. And the easiest way to explain that is we said that farm to table works fantastic for a local restaurant. We wanted to find out if it could work for music. And within the website called Songs Colorado, which was launching today, you can see some of the successes that we have. And on that page, we're trying to showcase the artists and show the ones that have already worked. And then as far as the user goes, I think we want to continue it as a promotional tool to say, for instance, Bank of Colorado, you used Trout Steak Revival. Is that the best name? Okay, sorry, I'm getting these names confused. Trout Steak Revival. So almost put that pressure on something like First Bank and say, well, who's the band you're going to take under your wing? And then there will also be a tab for these audio archives that I'm really psyched about, because they are not just a wealth of information, but I'm just glad that we have a document of that so we can go back. And a lot of people have a lot of questions about licensing. We can address some of that when we open it up to questions later on. But like I say, the audio archive that we have of the licensing panel here, I think is going to be fantastic to reference. We covered a lot in that. We explained a ton, because it's a very complicated part of the industry that can be very lucrative, and it can also be somewhat confusing. So that brings us up to today. Let's see here. Let's switch this panel. Here's my 10 ideas based on what I've done this year. We're going to cast a big net today on a lot of different things. But like I've said in other talks, that I believe at the end of the day, it's like this, the song, the sound, and the art has to be amazing. And the reason for that, I think, is pretty simple. When you're listening to Spotify or whatever you listen to, you only want to listen to stuff that you feel is amazing. You don't want to waste your time with anything that isn't. And you should be thinking about making the stuff as the highest quality you can, so it competes with that stuff. So that's kind of the impetus. That's where we want to get to. But with that said, all we can really do is take some steps, I think, to get closer to that. And here's my first one. I would say hold yourself accountable. I put this one down because I did this myself. I was messing around with some keyboards, and I have two kids. They have the sleep machine, and the music on there kind of drives me crazy. And I was thinking about making like an ambient record for kids, and I have a cool name for it. I think I had a friend do the design, and it's one of those things that, you talk about when you're having coffee with friends, and it doesn't ever come to fruition. So I put a picture of it on Instagram and said, okay, now I have to do this because I'm putting it out to the world. So set a realistic goal for yourself, whether it's not, in that case, an ambient record, it's very out of character for me, but it's like a challenge to do something like that, for me to release it. So I feel like I have to do that now. For yourself, it might be putting out a single on SoundCloud, putting a performance on the Vimeo or YouTube. It could be making a video for one of your past songs. It could be a whole record, which I think is the most obvious, and that's the currency we work in, right? Making a whole record. It could even be just doing an ambitious show. You could be thinking, my band does this and this, but we've never we've never done a gig with that band or something. So I would say set a realistic goal, put a date on the calendar or on your fridge. Put a date online or on your fridge if you don't want to post to the world, but your choice. For me, nothing motivates more than a deadline. And another thing about this is I feel like as artists, we're typically about 50% prepared and 50% terrified of the next thing we're doing, whether it's an album or a performance. I mean, that's how I always feel. Maybe I'm more like 60% most of the time, but there's got to be that element of the unknown, of fear, I think, to keep you going. And then this is all assuming that you are willing to work daily and work hard at that goal. And I think it's a lot easier to hold yourself accountable to a date, because then you can actually work backwards and put all the pieces together. If you need the song mastered, if you know that it's going to take 8 days to master, then just go backwards. Just be real honest with yourself. Let's go to number 2, Kyle. This one, this is something that over the year of doing this, I've kind of felt like in my early days in my career, I don't feel like I ever tapped into much of this, but building community. There's a group called the Rocky Mountain Synthesizer Meetup, total geek stuff, where they have petting zoos where someone brings a synth, some $3,000 Moog strange thing, and everyone gets to play it. It's bizarre, but totally worth it. And I think it's especially useful if you're in an early stage of your career, because you get the support from like-minded artists. There's also a Denver Ableton users group. How many people here know what Ableton is or have used it? Okay. It's pretty much, a standard piece of recording, but it has a lot of need to work together because it's incredibly complex. And then let's go to the next panel here, Kyle. There's here's something. DIME in Denver is the Detroit Institute of Music. They have free workshops. Jill Sobule is from Denver, actually, and she just gave this free songwriting workshop. But I think, hopefully, and if people are listening from other places in the state, I hope the point here is to just, going back to number 1, holding yourself accountable to join something like this and get a song ready. In this particular one, this was more of a lecture, granted. But they do have songwriting workshops. So back to number 1, holding yourself accountable. You've got a song, you think it's cool, you've played it to your boyfriend, and they think it's cool. So now it's time to put it out to someone else. DIME is actually in the Tivoli building on Auraria campus. Let's. So building community. Let's go to the next one. This one, am I changing them now? When I click on it, do I change it? Oh, all right.
I'm just so.
Oh, you're just right there. You're right there. Volunteer. So back to the title, just to improve your sound and yourself. I think sometimes I can get. I don't know if you call it writer's block or if the world is just steamrolling me, but I don't have a daily constant way to refresh where I'm like in the studio making new tracks. It's things get pretty busy, and sometimes you get dried out. You need something. And I put this down because I learned a lot when I went to the studio at Youth on Record. The point here is you may need to change your perspective. And there's ways to get involved volunteering with music that you can also gain some experience. So let's go to the next one here. And here's Youth on Record's page. They have like a process for you to get involved. But one of the things, talking to their director, I realized is that they have a lot of kids who did not come up with music lessons, but are really now super curious about guitar. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who play guitar in this room. That is something easy enough to go in and teach a 3-chord Pink Floyd song to someone on a Saturday afternoon. And the reason I bring this up is because I think this is a good way to recharge your batteries if need be. Here's another one. El Sistema is in Denver. They have, if you're an orchestral player, you play strings or horns, they have plenty of ways to volunteer in that way, but also just projects and helping with their fundraisers. I think it's really cool to see how they do things and involve the community. I'm a big fan. And here's another one. Moving on is if you don't have the teaching bone in your body, then maybe there's something else you could get involved with. This one happens to be my friend Miguel, who's the singer for Iskali. He put this festival together himself, and he said that he needed merch hands and stage hands. And I feel like it's always good to develop. How do we say I think it's good to develop a slash job as musicians. So being a drummer / engineer is not a bad thing. You probably know plenty of those. I mean, everyone knows like the singer-songwriter one. That's kind of obvious, but there's just so many. And helping with stage is actually very, very useful and could be the kind of thing you need to kind of recharge your batteries. So let's go to the next one here. And I think, are we going to do any questions after a few, or we'll keep rolling. All right, here's one that I believe in firmly, is that investing in studio time. I think people have this idea of, I'm going to get this song together, it's going to be tight, I'm going to call my friends who are going to help me play on it, and we're going to go into the practice space, and we're going to learn it, it'll be great. Everyone talks about, like, you got to be ready to go in the studio, you got to have your songs together. I think that's true, yeah, of course. There's also another truth to that, which is you kind of have to just learn. If you've never been, like, who here has not ever paid for studio time where someone else was engineering? Has everyone here like gone and actually paid an engineer? Okay, everyone's done that. So everyone can relate to the idea that earlier is better. So if you're working on a demo and you're not sure, you don't think it's there yet, I'm going to encourage you to go in earlier, because I feel like that the discomfort can be part of the process, where you leave with that audio and you're playing it to your friends and you feel terrible about your voice, or you feel terrible about your guitar playing. I think that's a really positive thing. I feel like I learn more about my drumming every time I come out of the studio, and it's the clearest lens to tell you what you need to work on. And the other thing it does is, I think it trains you for it just trains you for getting better the next time you're in. So even if you have a small amount, $150, and that's what you feel like you can spend to work on a demo, I feel like at the end of that, you're going to get a lot more than you're going to get a lot more value out of that, because you're training yourself to be disciplined, to get organized, to get into the studio. I don't think we have to list the amount of studios, but a lot of my time as ambassador this year was walking around talking to people who either are engineers or own studios. And you know, another thing I would say here is, this could be, when you say investing in yourself, I think it's I think this is a really good way to do it, because even I think sometimes we can distract ourselves by buying new gear or taking lessons or doing something that is a little off from what really needs to happen, which is investing in studio time. And it also goes back to number one, which is like this kind of accountability. It's just great to have. If you know 2 weeks you're going into the studio, you're going to get something done. So let's go. And here's a little. I'm going to geek out for a second here. The Brian Eno quote, which I'll let you guys read. But I put this up. I think it. Not trying to be braggadocious, but this is my favorite studio in Denver, Mighty Fine Productions, and this I think I just put this up here to put the possibility out of going in with nothing. Go in with nothing, like bring a coffee and don't bring any drums. I've recorded on those blue drums; they sound fantastic. If you're a guitarist, those guys have stuff. If you don't have a song, that's what my quote is on the left there. That Brian Eno is basically saying that not having focus might actually lead you to something way more interesting than if you were prepared with your own guitar. Yeah, so what was that one? Yeah, invest in studio time. Let's see here. Let me go to. All right, here's another good one. This is one of the funnest. Yeah, let's go to number 5. Yeah, there it is. This is one of the funnest things I worked on this year. As I was talking to a bunch of people, the whole idea of what a producer is, we put together a panel, and we tried to define what that is in 2017, because the back to the last picture where there's a giant studio and you've got all the gear and you have someone who's telling you, hey, that was a good solo, maybe you should try it again, up an octave or something. That kind of classic producer is more and more rare, and there's more laptop producers, there's beat makers, there's all kinds of stuff. But the point is that all these people are way more accessible than you think, and if it's finances that is keeping you from hiring a producer, you should educate yourself, and by that I mean talk to people who have used one before, or maybe talk to someone who's like just slightly more advanced in their career than you. Someone who has maybe just recorded more than you, and talk to them and say, hey, I've always liked your records. Why don't you consider just producing 2-3 songs of ours? And how to choose is basically to go with your gut. If it's someone who feels right, then that's the right person to go with. Let's go to the next panel, Kyle. This is what we did on May 25th at a place called Recreative Denver, Santa Fe Arts District. And it was moderated by Seraphin Sanchez, he's a Ableton rep, Jason Timothy, who does these incredible tutorials, and he's a wealth of knowledge about recording online. John Bonus he works at Side 3 Studios in Denver, and then Greg Zimba is from the band Rubedo. And they talked for a while. I edited this audio down to about 65 minutes or something. There's plenty in there. If you are thinking about a producer, I highly recommend going to this. This will be on the site we're launching today. This is on songscolorado.com, and I think it's under the tab called Panels. And it's long, but it's good. And I think you can download it too. Hopefully, that's something you can do easily on your phone. And this is kind of covering a wide range of people's styles, like I was saying, going from beat maker to or what did I say? I said people working with small rock trios who have no money to pitching songs to Flo Rida. And and a lot in between. And I think this is I think this is a huge part. I think this is a key piece of making stuff better, which goes back to my core belief that it's better songs and better art that makes a scene. Uh, so I hope you'll listen to that. It was a lot of fun, and let us know what you think about that. I do believe that's a panel we could continue to maybe even have a series with. I know we were talking about that before. But okay, so I'm gonna keep moving ahead here, and this one, I think you could probably get this. I think you could get this anywhere. This kind of advice, but I think as it relates to what I was doing this year, um, I felt like people. Just people were talking to me about just wanting to do something different, and so one of those things in my research and chats would be destination studios, meaning getting out from where you are, getting out from the town you're in, and getting away. I think I meant to say getting away from the people that you typically play with. For my own personal journey, this was done by co-writing with a friend in LA, and I started a side project where I would fly out there, he would fly to Denver, and we would obviously outside of our normal bands, and this kind of for me this was a great way to break the monotony. Um, and yeah, okay, getting away. Yeah, that's what it was. My note here says basically just getting away from your immediate circle, trying to collaborate with someone outside of your circle. So here's a couple ones. Just crazy ideas. This one's fun. There's the Tank Center for Sonic Arts. If you guys don't know about this, I recommend getting on YouTube and listening to some audio. It's insane. It's a giant silo, and they turned it into it's a water tower turned into a music venue, but the amount of reverb in it is something ridiculous. Did you go with Detour? Okay. Did anyone go with anyone been there? It's it's the Western Slope, I believe, and it's just bizarre. You need to go. I could see taking some acoustic instruments there and recording it and using that onto another recording. I think would be amazing. So, and there's plenty of archive of Colorado musicians and people from out of state recording there. Let's keep going here. Here's another one, Evergroove. I wrote these guys down because I think Brad is the owner. Anyway, talking to them about what they have going on up there. Beautiful studio, but one thing they'll do for you is you can. I'm not totally sure how it works, but I think you can book your studio time there, and also book a broadcast session from there. So. This is more of a destination too. It's in Evergreen, Colorado, and I'd like to. I know anyone can broadcast from their phones, but these guys have it a little more dialed in, obviously. And the next one is here's one called Hideaway Studios, and I'm not even sure how I discovered these guys. I was talking to somebody this year, and they said, "Oh yeah, have you heard about Hideaway?" Now I want to go. And this is just the thing I bring up with this is like, yeah, you're not guaranteed to have a better record by going to a faraway studio. Are you going to have a better time? Yeah, you definitely could. This one's in Sedalia, but I think the two things that are interesting about it is that my life is insanely busy, and I need to time box. I need if I'm going to work on something like this, I need 36 hours, and this is all I'm doing, and then I go back to chaos. And you might be like that too. People talk about that in more smaller chunks where you're trying to write a song for 45 minutes or something. But I'm talking about like time boxing a couple days. Uh, the other thing too is that you're probably gonna have like a better story if you go do something like this. If you're recording on a laptop in your bedroom, that's been done, and that's not too exciting, especially to people who want to write about your record. So let's move on to some. Here's a couple more. I'm going to get to a couple more very tangible suggestions on what you might think of as an actionable item, and then I'll get into some more. The last two are way more broad, more just like big picture type stuff. So here's the one that relates to last year's workshops that we did on licensing. Preparing your audio. You might have heard this from other sources, but one of the easiest ways to do it is to build a SoundCloud page. I think Dropbox would probably be my first choice, but I'll show you a picture of one way that SoundCloud works really nice. Simplifying access. When I say that, make sure everything works when you're sending someone a link. Make sure it works. Test it. And I say simplify legality means if you wrote this song while in a band from 5 years ago, and it was a band that everybody co-wrote, and then they put it on ASCAP. It says that there's 4 writers on it, and you put that song up as something that you're going to share with someone else to use it in something. You better be absolutely clear that those other people on that song are into that idea. Only put your best songs out. I think like a 5-song page is fine for this purpose. And then as it relates to syncing, one of my suggestions was to make your own 1-minute and 2-minute edits. So be really critical. If you want to use somebody else to do that, give them your instrumental and say, just cut this up, make this sound as good as possible over 1 minute. And if you need to pay them, pay them. And some of this stuff, we covered some of this stuff in the Composing for Theater, TV, Film workshop, and that's another one that you can get to on the panels tab of Songs Colorado. So moving along, let's show. This is Tommy Metz's page, and I hope he doesn't mind that I'm sharing this because it is. If you look, it does say playlist is private. I like that because I don't think this is the kind of thing that you don't need to put this out to the public. I have a licensing and custom music company now, and I can't tell you how great it is to have something like this. Knowing that Tommy wrote all these songs, he's put them into instrumentals, he's made 90-second edits of them. He's even told me that one's not mastered, and then he's given this, which is the best, because then I can download it and put it into the commercial that I'm trying to sync it to, and send it back to a client. This is perfect. This is great. Plus, his songs are great. So I would say this could be something that maybe would take you a week or so to do, and you might need some help with the editing, but very doable. This same kind of thing is possible and very easy to do on Dropbox, but Dropbox doesn't have as much, not as much social connectivity on Dropbox, but same kind of thing. Again, I will say, if licensing is one of the main things you are concerned about as far as your career goes, definitely listen to the licensing workshop that's on within the panels. So we can keep going here. I just got a couple more. This one, I think gets taken for granted. Master your audio. There's a lot of plugins that do it for dirt cheap now, and that's all well and good. I use them myself. But I think you need to put out your best as often as you can. And I think kind of the implication there is you're putting your best out as much as you can afford, because mastering's not cheap. And here's the other thing too, is that I think audio is a document that you want to last. I've been in this game for well, I've been making records for over 12 years, I think. But going back, you want that document to be as good as it possibly could have been at that time, because 5 years will go by quick, and you'll go back and listen, and that material could have life. Anyway, I think you get my point. I was like my pal Bryce was saying, we were talking about just the scene in our state, and we said that there's something that you have to be able to do, and it's like if you put this audio next to a song that everyone agrees like this is a national band, and you A/B it, if you can say this one sounds local and this one doesn't, then you got to go back and say where's the step that I made that makes it so that my track stands out as the local one. I think you also need to use other tracks as a reference. It's really easy right now to take a program like Audacity and highlight all the audio and blast it out. Where you guys probably some people know this, some people don't, but there's something about perceived quality, and it has to do with loudness, where you can very simply put two pieces of two songs that are about the same in recording quality, and if one you're playing right after the other is a lot louder, it makes you perceive it as better. But we all know, I mean, I think you know where I'm going with that. You have to be way more sensitive to what actually sounds better. And the whole idea of using references, I think you got to reference things that are in your genre. I mean, if you're making hip hop and you need to be really specific about what kind of hip hop it is. Is it, you're trying to make pop hip hop? You're trying to make something that's way more organic, like a band sounding. So I think mastering can be a way to learn more about your audio, and you also become a better listener. I think once you start putting this lens on of thinking about how things are coming across sonically. Let's go to the next two here. The first one, there's Catadon Studios in Denver. All I have to say about this is that this gear doesn't do what your laptop does. So utilize it. And these guys, I think, will even it's on their site right there. It says, come to the studio to hear the difference yourself. So you can even go and try it out. Next one is this guy, Audible Oddities, Shawn, I think is his name. He's in Durango, and I like this site. I would check it out because just clicking on getting started and FAQ, you can learn a ton about how. So if you're doing, you're either an engineer yourself or you're doing a home recording, go into these getting started in FAQ pages. You can learn a lot about how to prepare your audio and what to expect from something like this, and he's reasonably priced too. Okay, I think I just have two more, and this is going to get a little less technical, a little bit more kind of big picture-ish from what I've talked about all year in this role as ambassador, which, like I said, is a lot of connecting the dots, a lot of thinking about what people's needs are, where people are coming from. This one's important though. Take stock and be proactive. Be honest about your money, get honest feedback from friends, and think about how you're developing as a professional. So I've had people ask me this year, do you think we need a manager? Do you think it's time to get a manager? And during the young managers workshop that we did back in May, Francois Baptiste, who manages Trev Rich, who's kind of blowing up in the hip hop scene, he's just said he was really frank about it and said, if I'm going to represent you, I need to see where you're working, how busy your calendar is, and then if we start talking, I need to know how much you're making, because these guys are taking a percentage, which is it's a sliding scale, but they're not going to be able to. Someone who's managing a big artist or a bigger artist than you is not going to be able to take you on unless they believe in you. In which case, they're going to find you first. You're not going to have to knock on any doors necessarily. So the truth to that matter is that you have to be at a place where someone can take a percentage of you, which means there's a lot of work you have to do ahead of time. I was talking to a band last week who matter-of-factly said that they were asking what the next step should be. They said, this year we're making 50 grand, and next year we're projecting to make 100 grand. So what do you think the next step is? And if a manager is going to take 10%, yes, there's managers who will take 10% of that and work hard. But I said, my advice was who's your accountant? Like, why don't you get someone to do the books for real? Because if you're about to double your income in 1 year, it's going to get really complicated. And I just looked at him and said, I guarantee there's someone in your band who's doing it. He's like, yeah, there is. So that person is going to get taxed. There's going to be, things could potentially get weird. So yeah, like I say, be realistic about where you're at. And when it comes to finances, if you're in a band, you have to be super upfront. Another bullet here would be just get better at communicating, whether it's finances or something, or publishing, or you're about to sign a contract. I think one of the easiest things, if you're not a good communicator, is to just be able to say, I don't understand what's happening here. So if you're talking about management, licensing, whatever it is, it's one of the easiest ways to get on the same page. And to be fair, you don't have to understand every last thing. You build teams for that. You don't have to understand everything, but the best way to get better at communicating, I think, is to just go with that idea of saying, hey, help me understand where you're coming from here. Let me see. I have a couple more little ideas that were taken from discussions this year. Getting your small group of people together to get super honest feedback. I feel like my group is I think I have 4 people that I can call and have them play a demo for, and just have them tear it apart. This doesn't need to be a big number of people. I think the bigger, the less powerful this piece of advice is. That's all I'll say about that. Here's one other idea I've had too. This is from talking to a friend who was booking a show at the Bluebird in Denver. Some of you may do this already, but I think it's a good idea to talk to the promoter or talent buyer of the last gig you played. If you want to, if it's getting more people into the show the next time you play, figure out how to do that with them, not on your own. You can. This is a type of relationship that I never did in my early years, but started to understand. I understood many years later how that relationship is it's super important. My manager helped me understand that. and this goes back to being honest. I think if you do talk to that talent buyer and you're, obviously be respectful of that person's time, but asking real questions like, do we need to go to find a smaller room first and try to sell that out before we go into this next room? So, yeah, honest feedback. Let's go to the last one, and this is the most general of them all. What I've kind of understood this year. So, what does this mean? Relationships are what creative industries are based on. That the music biz and what we have going on in Colorado, it's not like anywhere else. It's just it defies description and logic sometimes, and it moves around and changes. But what happens is that it's really, and even what I'm doing with licensing and custom music, it's really about people will only call you back if you're doing a good job and they like you. My Jay Anderson, who does sound for Ani DeFranco, and he does sound for my band too. He's phenomenal. He's one of the best in the business. He's never had a business card. He says it's 85% can you get along with people, and 15% can you do your job. The last thing I'll leave this on is that people move and change, and it's a very liquid business. I don't know if that's a word, but people are changing very fast, and they may. I'll take it for example. A friend that we have who was the talent buyer of the Boulder Theater. He moved on to New York, and now he books Bowery Ballroom and Bowery in Las Vegas. So if you trash the green room at the Boulder Theater 6 years ago, it's going to be more of a pain to get the attention that you want to get into those Bowery rooms. And like I say, in 5 years' time, this person could be, the talent buyer somewhere, or managing bands, and then you're talking to them about managing your band, or they're a booking agent. So respect people's time and just be cool to people, because this whole industry is like a very small town that moves all over the globe. I've seen it from touring Europe, but I see it in the States and North America, South America. It's a really tight-knit kind of group. So lastly, we're going to open up to questions in a second here, but lastly, Kyle and I are proud to launch this today, which is celebrating and educating about the licensing work that I did last year and this year, and like I say, the workshop panels, the tab panels where the workshops are recorded, is something that I think is going to be very valuable. So that's it. Oh, here it is. Yeah, this is it. Hey, there it is. All right. So cool. Do we have questions, Kyle, or?
One, and then if anybody wants to write it down.
All right. The top one? Phew. All right. Oh, okay. You read it, you have to answer it. Oh, yeah. What is the strategy for representing / including / networking with the hybrid category-defining musicians and artists who can most easily be described in the footsteps of bang on a can? So this person is referring to Bryce Deschner from the National, who's been commissioned at Carnegie Hall to create new work. This is a deep question. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I've thought about this because I think my bandmate Tom kind of falls into this category of he's been commissioned to do works of theater and dance. Uh, yeah, so the question is, what is the strategy for representing slash including slash networking for hybrid category defining musicians? I think the strategy is to I think it's to go find out what's working for you. I know my bandmate Tom can he could sell tickets doing a small chamber style performance in small rooms. They sound fantastic. It doesn't feel like a rock show because it's acoustic. Um, I think I think my only advice would be to try to look at some examples, see what's working. Are these people doing? Are they doing living room shows? If they did get a grant, find out where the grant came from, and if that's the case, figure out how to write your own grants or to hire a grant writer, and then and yeah, and I think in the case with the national, it's you have to realize that people have a short attention span, and it's hard unless you're somebody like Tool, where their fans are rabid and they want to know every last thing that each individual member is doing, whether it's a winery or a side project, or you're Mike Patton, where every side project kind of carries the same weight. You have to you 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 have to make sure you're giving love to that main thing that people came to see you for. So with the national, obviously they need to tour and record, and then that I think that only helps. And um, sometimes the opposite is true, not always, but it's that's a hard question because it's I see it more and more now, especially with dealing with composers who are. Um, I'm working on projects where composers are working on documentary films, and they have their own bands, and um, yeah, I think you just have to give both as much attention as you can. So
Shawn, can I just throw out on a
yeah,
concrete level? Banging on a Can is also basically formed a thing called Fountain Nation, and Fountain Nation is bringing a big project here to Fort Collins in October called One Beat. So
cool.
we're actually working with all those folks here at the Music District to put all that together. So if you want to come meet some of them in person, we can do that too.
Yeah, I think can we put that up on
We'll put it all over.
put it all over the place?
Yeah.
I think this person would be very interested in talking to Bang on a Can. That was Jesse up top.
Who asked that question?
That just came in on a piece of paper. So I'm not sure if they were here or online, but Bang on a Can is coming to Fort Collins, so you could ask them in person how to.
Well, One Beat, which is part of Fountain Nation and Bang on a Can. Yeah.
Oh, great.
All the same group of people, but it's a very large group. So we can talk specifically about who you want to be connected with.
That question will be answered. All right. Here's one more. How much did you practice your craft when you began music? A lot. How much do you practice now that you are established? Less. Is it mostly maintenance? No, it's project driven. It's just this guitarist Dave Devine asked me to play Ennio Morricone soundtrack music, and I had to look at the book and just kind of figure out what I needed to learn for that specific job. So that's the gist of it. I think as you get older and you've been doing it a lot, I think you go in waves from how much that actually matters, because sometimes it can hurt you to your core that you're not practicing enough, and other times you realize that life is happening, and you have to go with. I don't know if someone asked in the room about this, but yeah, I think it's I think it has to be project driven. So cool. Where are we at, Kyle? Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
About the loudness with mastering. I know that there's this whole like the loudness wars that you've heard about.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm trying to understand where's the good level, because you have your super loud pop music, but then, you know, for more folk singer-songwriter, you're probably not going to want that. So what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. The question is with loudness and mastering, what's a happy balance? Where should you be with when you're recording, when you're finishing something? I don't have. My answer for that would be one: try to be as knowledgeable as you can about your genre, and I think you have to be super specific, because, like, you take something like, you know, Menahan Street Band, which is like part of the Dap Kings collective, and when they release their song and the track sounds a certain way as it comes out on their record, and then Jay-Z borrows it and then raps over it, and it sounds completely different. It's the same song, essentially, but obviously they created a whole beat out of a loop. So and obviously that wouldn't have been appropriate to master it that way for the Menahan Street Band, because that's not the sound they were going for. So I think you have to be super specific about what it is you're doing, and always know that you can always remaster if something comes up and you've just landed a TV commercial or something and they're saying this doesn't sound good. Well, as long as you have your audio and everything's labeled and you know that this is your mix pre-mastering, just have that and then pay someone to remaster it. The other thing I would suggest is, like with Catadon or Audible Oddities or anyone else you would call about mastering, going with someone who has, not just someone who has the gear who wants to do it for you, because I think that's one thing. Go with someone who's just listened to a ton of audio, just tons and tons and tons. There's a guy I think is in Westminster who remasters Sony like Sony jazz classics or something, and he's got that job because he has probably listened and mastered thousands of records. So don't go with the person with gear. Go with the person who's just done exactly that, and talk to them. Pick their brain. They'll love to talk about it too, and just say, I think this is where I'm going with it, but I don't know. And if it's like if it's radio that you're thinking about the most, then talk to someone who has done a lot of radio mastering, because I personally don't work in band wise. I don't with the licensing stuff I've done. There's been different standards for broadcast levels and just the whole concept of squeezing and compression is much different for commercials. But at the same time, they might take something really quaint like an Iron and Wine tune, and that Iron and Wine tune goes into these separate processors. It's getting smashed, so when it shows up on an M&M's commercial, it's completely smashed, and that audio that you're hearing on TV sounds different than the audio here. So I think you can probably infer that I'm saying you can always kind of scale back on how much you have to squeeze, because stuff can always be remastered. And sometimes with TV, they're gonna squash it again. So yeah. Here's another one. Here's a couple more. Or one more. We got how and why were the bands on the website chosen? For commercial projects, they're solid choices. That's a really good question. What I did last year was I called it rogue supervision, where I was just going out and trying to find what people's needs were. And this is with not much experience in the legality of how to get songs licensed and paid for. I didn't even in the beginning of this years ago, I didn't even really understand how to write an invoice and even know what to put on an invoice or even understand what a complete buyout was or a work for hire was. And so in doing this, I just came across these situations where, for instance, the Still Tide was, they happened to have some instrumentals that they were working on. They even wound up retitling the instrumental that they sent me, but it happened to be that I was talking to video producer who was doing a series on breweries all around the state, and it was like a 5-part series, just to give you guys an idea of how much beer we have in this state. A 5-part series of the breweries, and budget was low. The selling them on this concept was very easy, obviously, because they said, "Oh yeah, we'll put the name in the advertisement," and it's one of these win-win situations where the Brewers Guild, who put the video together, looks good because they're using local music rather than using stock music. So a lot of this with the bands was just kind of luck. Is like right place at the right time. I think I emailed Ben asking for. I said, I need some rock sounding things because there's this brewery thing happening. They have to be local. And like I say, at the same time, this is all kind of done with making deal notes within an email. Like, can you agree to these terms? And like nothing's even signed; it's just agreed to. So it's not ideal, but these were kind of done fast and furious. Trout Steak Revival I was talking to a producer for a commercial, and she said she needed something that sounded very Colorado-ish. I was on the phone with Stefan from Flowbots later in the day, and he said, "Have you heard Trout Steak Revival?" I hadn't. We found their best song. I passed it to the producer, and kind of the way that the nature of this business with syncing music is that things happen really super fast. And within 2 hours, she says, "Oh, the client loves the song," and I was like, "Oh boy, okay, let me go find out who wrote it. Do they have an instrumental? Do they have any kind of publishing deal? Is this all going to be clean?" Turns out, luckily, it was, and those guys made the Bank of Colorado look hip for a moment, because I don't think banks usually do. And then they liked that camaraderie was so great that they wound up using them a year later for another. They used them for another commercial. Lark, who's over there in the corner, the a cappella group, is a little bit different because the commercial was for CU Denver, and CU Denver wanted to incorporate students, and these women are, some of them have graduated already, but they, at the time, students at CU, and their group is called Lark. They're a professional / student-based band, and then the commercial also, per the request of the client was CU, they wanted to have an alumni too. There's this guy DJ Jones, Mario. He's a radio DJ, but also a scratch DJ. So his scratching adds to the song as well. I was involved as a producer on that, and it was actually a lot of fun. I think it came out really well. But that was the only one. That was the only one of these ones featured that was started from scratch, completely from scratch. The Shady Elders one, they're at the top right here. They wound up. The client was Colorado Tourism. Obviously, another Colorado Tourism is another group of people. You could say it makes sense that they're community facing, for sure. But we had instrument. I passed them some songs and like their Bandcamp site, and we kind of went through, picked out some instrumentals, and I was talking to Miles and Fox from the band and trying to figure out how we could organize this. But the way those got chosen was the client picked 3 songs that they thought would work, and then we had to go into the studio, take the instrumentals. We went into Rocky Mountain Recorders, which is on Alameda in Denver, great place, and we wound up doing these ethereal, wordless choruses on those. So that's about it. I think that the way that they were chosen was just kind of like I say, part of this rogue supervision that was fortunately successful. People got paid. People learned a lot, and eventually led into more and more. So yeah, that's about it. How much did I practice? That's a good one. Any other questions? I think that's about it. I'm going to hang out for a little bit. You guys want to converse off mic? Thanks, Kyle. Are we good? All right.